Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the world, across the seven seas. My name is Juan Martel, and I am the host of the Psych Life podcast. And today we have the awesome pleasure of talking to Andre De Castro, a licensed mental health counselor like myself, who also teaches at local universities in New York.
Mhm.
Am I right about that, Mr. De
Uh,
Castro?
yeah, you're right. Yeah, I teach at CUNY school. So I've taught at like York College, Queensboro Community College, City Tech College, Hunter College. So I've taught in a lot of places at this point, and it's the City University of New York schools.
Hey man, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk mental health. And random mental health topics. I know it's been a long time coming. We've tried setting this up a couple times, but I know you're a very busy man. Maybe
Yeah.
we can start off by you introducing yourself to the audience and so the audience can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Well, hello everybody. My name is Andre De Castro. Like Juan said, I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm also an adjunct lecturer in CUNY schools, so I do teach psychology, many different topics, many different college students. And yeah, I love honestly, like I love what I do. Honestly, it's not even like work to me. It's just like living life.
I even see the chair in the background. Is this your office where you do
Yeah,
the
this is
counseling?
yeah, this is my this is my office. This is the office of my private practice, which is Mindworks NYC. So I have a private practice in New York City based in Williamsburg. And it's a very beautiful office. I love it. This is something that honestly like I dreamed about. And, like I had a dream where I kind of wanted to have like a therapeutic office that had like a scenery of the city. So like I had like the big windows, like those big open windows where you could see the actual New York City skyline. So like, I feel like for some people it's kind of a little bit distracting, but that's why I kind of have like a chair there so they could look at the wall there. So they're not so distracted by the scenery while they're talking and stuff. But it's good. It's really nice to have an office like this. It was something I dreamed about and I made the dream happen. I looked up offices, therapeutic offices. Like I just researched it. I found it and I was like, oh yeah, this is what I dreamed of. You know what I mean? Like literally, it's crazy.
Those that are watching this from Spotify, excuse me, from YouTube are going to be able to see your office. But those on the Spotify chat, you guys are not going to be able to see it. But don't worry about it. I'm going to put a link to um to Andre's Instagram account, and I think you have like a video there on how the office looks and an intro basically into your business, which is actually pretty cool. I saw that today, Andre.
Nice.
So today I did want to bring you on. The reason I wanted to bring you on a while back was because you were talking about cancel culture, and it's something that we exchange messages on, just talking, because obviously I've known you now for a couple of years on Instagram, just messaging back and forth once in
Yes.
a while. But the cancel culture, and you talking about it really made me want to look it up more, because I was kept seeing things more as what I was referring to you earlier as a all or nothing mentality, and also it's used in CBT as a almost like polarized thinking. I think it's a word, and it's funny how psychology has all these words and terms to make us help us understand things a little bit better. But cancel culture is a term. It's more of like a political term, at least from my perspective, that does also describe these psychological terms, like all or nothing thinking or polarized thinking. And so let's maybe start off with the basic definition. What would you term or define cancel culture as?
Annoying.
For sure, honestly, for sure.
Cancel culture is annoying because I think like a reason for that is because like you have to like, I think like in today's society, we are conditioned through validation, right? So I think like, growing up with social media, growing up with like Instagram, with Facebook, MySpace, and you want to bring it way back, Zanga, right? And things like that. I don't know if you ever know that, but back in the day,
I know
that's
Craigslist.
Craigslist. Yeah, I bought a lot of cars off Craigslist before. But it's interesting because like, I feel like a lot of us, especially like I guess like people born past 1990 have grown up in that era of like constantly looking for validation through social media, through likes, recognition, things like that. So I feel like when it comes to like cancel culture, it kind of hinders what to that point of like where we've grown to, kind of like, you know, if we're so used to validation, now it's kind of like we can't even like say certain things or feel like a need to say certain things to feel like a sense of like uh validation or recognition or something. You know, now it's like we're kind of like, I feel like more people are more hesitant to say things, or, you know, like the whole, what I've noticed is, you know, I've seen people kind of like online like post about the whole you know, Israel versus you know, the things that were happening in Gaza, you know, all that stuff that was happening. um and I saw people like post things and then take it down. You know, I'm like, wait, where did it go? Where did it, you know, it's like people I think are like, you know, because there's such a strong polar opposite ends in that type of debate or that type of situation, you're gonna have people coming at you left and right. Like, you know, I think even that the person running for mayor in New York City, Andrew Yang, posted something about being for Israel and whatnot, and people just like bashed him for it, you know, and like, oh, you know, that's cancel culture, right? That's the idea of it is like you can't say things anymore, kind of.
And man,
I'm so sorry. While you're talking, like you brought up some good points, and as for and I think you described and you gave like a good example and a pretty good example of a recent current event, right? The whole Palestinian versus Israel thing.
Yeah.
But what I'm noticing more is, and for me, you know, the cancel culture aspect, and you brought up freedom of speech, but it's more of, if you were to say something that I don't agree with, then I'm just gonna cancel you out, right? And I call it surface thinking because I'm not challenging the points. I'm not saying, man, what he said here is correct, but what he said here is not. It's more of a all or nothing, right? Or, you know, he said this one little thing, and I'm just gonna now bash him and try to cancel him. And whether I'm aware that I'm canceling him or not, that's a whole 9 yards. And it becomes kind of a slippery slope because in regards to the Israel or Palestine thing, and I'm always very careful on what I say because, you know, I don't want to be canceled as well. But I saw that it was all like an all or nothing, like, oh, Israel this, and then Palestine, oh, they're the victims in this because of this. And it's almost like, okay, why are people not looking at actual points instead of trying to make a justification? Almost a skipping of points and details and just the skipping of the analyzing part before forming a conclusion. That I know I went a little deep there, or at least I think a little deep, but I'm noticing this now trickle down to everybody else. But I want to make sure that before we move forward in this conversation, we get the definition on point. Would you say that would be a good addition to what you've mentioned about your definition of cancel culture?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, definitely. I think like talking about it more on like a psychological level, you know, there's like, if you go back into Psych 101, you know, Piaget's theories of cognitive development, you know, kind of like that idea that, you know, children at a certain age think concretely. And then when they get to a certain age, they start to think formal operationally, you know, like where they can start hypothesizing and things like that. But what a lot of people don't, I think a lot of people aren't aware of is the idea of post-formal thinking. You know, this was like created by the neo-Piagetians, the people who like carried on Piaget's theories and developed their own. They say like nowadays, like, because I think of like social media and technology, a lot of people have more of like a gray area type of thinking to a certain extent. Because when you go online, when you go on a social media, someone posts something and says something about it, and then you look into the comments and you're reading all these other comments about what everyone else is saying. So it kind of puts you psychologically and cognitively in this loophole of like, where do I stand? You know, like where am I on this topic? You know, and you could kind of like see the division between two sides, you know, and I think that's what's creating I know it's like, it seems like cancel culture is like this all or nothing thinking. Yes, I think that is correct. That's a good definition for that, because it's kind of like it's this way or, you know, the highway or whatever, basically, like, you know. So I think that with post-formal thinking, it's kind of like the what type of word could you use for that? It's kind of like the I don't want to say like a cure, but like maybe like something that could alleviate that all or nothing thinking, something that could alleviate cancel culture to a certain extent. Because I think with post-formal thinking, it's about understanding each side and then making your own decision without that kind of like judgment towards each side to be like, I'm going to cancel you because I don't believe in what you're saying. Post-formal thinking is more like, I understand what you're saying and I understand what you're saying, but where do I stand? You know what I mean? So it's not like so black and white.
You know, and I have to control myself. I was going to take that down a different avenue, but I'm glad that you mentioned that. Although you mentioned how sometimes if you're looking at a YouTube video and I said all or nothing thinking, and you kind of corrected me, you can say, oh, people are indulging more in the gray area. I can see why you say that, and I'm glad that you said it, but at the same time, I also see, yeah, people for a second may indulge more in the gray area, but really at the end of the day, they're following like an ideology. Like for example, people now, because of social media and this whole cancel culture behind it, they fail to understand, and we're both Americans, just from different states, but they fail to understand how the American system actually works, how each state is almost like a country, and we're the United States, and each state is going to do things differently, but somehow someone from California wants to push how something's done in New York, where you're from, and they don't have an understanding that, hey, people there in New York are going to want to do things in a different way, but it's like they're following an ideology, almost like and if you don't fall within this, I'm going to cancel you. I hope you don't mind me pivoting, but you mentioned freedom of speech, and in our field, and I don't want you to be and hesitate, Andre, because I could also delete this part, if anything, but for freedom of speech in our profession specifically, because we're both licensed mental health counselors, we're seeing like people want to put the brakes on free speech. They want to try and prevent it, saying under regulatory guidelines, like, oh, if someone says this, they shouldn't be allowed to say it, or if someone says, oh, they're not in accordance with, let's say, a person's certain sexual orientation, then we're going to cancel this person because that's hate speech. For me, that's cancel culture at its finest. Again, I don't like what you're saying, so I don't want you to say it. I'm going to take you off the platform that you're saying it off of. That's cancel culture at its finest. But to me, it's also a slippery slope. And our field is actually on the forefront of trying to push this agenda, to be honest with you. So I just want to share, if you could you share your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, sure. To be honest with you, I feel like personally, I love freedom of speech. It's definitely something important that I feel like we all need in life. But to be honest with you, I feel like to a certain extent, freedom of speech might be the death of us. I know it's a tough thing to say or a tough thing to hear, but I feel like, you've seen it happen kind of, and you're seeing it right now with all these conspiracy theories. People are putting information out there that's like not the correct information. So how does that affect us as people? Not just on health topics, but on a psychological level. It's kind of like it's confusing us in a certain way, and that's what I'm trying to say. I feel like freedom of speech is going to one day be the whole cause of more division. You know what I mean? But as much as because I'm American, so I grew up with individualistic ideologies, and I'm all for freedom of speech, but I do also at the same time, once again, I'm going into that gray area, right? I'm separating myself from my own thoughts of what I believe, and I'm going into that other polar opposite end, and I'm saying, look, freedom of speech can be a bad thing as well. It could be a bad thing because it can lead people in wrong directions that could really be detrimental to their mental health, their actual physical health, and even in their interpersonal and intrapersonal lives. I don't know if you had a friend that kind of canceled you out because of your political beliefs, but it's happened to me. And, it's like a crazy feeling to think about that, wow, you really deleted me because of what I believe. That's crazy, so is freedom of speech really a good thing? I guess that's the question. What do you think?
And the whole freedom of speech thing ties to the cancel culture, just so the audience knows that's why we're talking about it. And I like how you put it on me. To be honest, I don't have an issue with freedom of speech. Although I agree with some of the things that you said, by the way, it's not that I don't. I don't have an issue with freedom of speech. I take issue. This is the part I take issue in. It's in you said something, and now because you said it, and you have a right to say it, but I don't agree with you, I'm gonna cancel you.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of actually like talking about the points and just leaving it be. And I'm so passionate about this subject. That's why I brought you on. And so when you say that freedom of speech can eventually be the death of us, I see why you said it after you explained it, and it's because of the misinformation out there. And my only issue with the regulation of freedom of speech when it comes regulation is who is the one regulating it. That's my whole thing. And so that's why I'm very careful about the whole freedom of speech topic. But it's important because I always have to remind myself I can that person can say whatever, but I don't have to agree with it. But I shouldn't cancel them for what they said if they believe in it, because one day they can come after me. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually the whole premise behind it. But it's going a step above now when you say, oh, I think freedom of speech is the death of us because there's a lot of misinformation. There's nothing false about that. There actually is, and actually that's the thing. How much? And I hope you don't mind me answering this question because it's kind of going on the flow, and I don't want to destroy it because this is really why I wanted to bring you on. With information like you have, for example, things that are thought of they give us two choices. It is the most famous psychology tricks. I could present someone with two choices. I do it with adolescents all the time in my practice, and they think they have a choice, and it's easier for them to push on something. They think they have a choice, but really I'm giving them the same option. It leads down the same way, and it's the simplest thing. But they have things like MSNBC and Fox, complete opposites, but they give it to the people, and then they become tribalistic in nature because there's only really two choices. Fox is Republican, and then the MSNBC is the furthest apart in Democrats, and they don't talk about points, they talk about ideology. How do you see this and this type of media grab part of the problem in cancel culture?
Because it simply shifts people's perspectives into believing what they want them to believe.
But the people watching these stations, do you think that they realize for themselves that they are now engaging in an ideology? Because this is where cancel culture stems from. Honestly, like not the media and stuff, but I believe in all of this. So anytime someone says a little thing, something against that, even if it's facts, I'm just gonna cancel them instead of listening to them. So, what do you think about that and the news stations, the impact they have?
Well, cancel culture definitely stems from biases. I think like our biases as people, like especially our confirmation biases, hinder us, right? Like to a certain extent, right? Because you want to see what you believe mostly. So if I believe, like, for example, like if I'm a Trump supporter, right, I'm going to go ahead and turn on Fox News. If I'm a anti-Trump person, I'm going to go ahead and turn on CNN. So because it feeds my confirmation biases, it comes down to biases. And I think the news stations, I think they know this. I think they definitely know this. Like I'm pretty sure they have some organizational psychologists in their companies that say like, oh, put it like this or make it look like this, so it captures this perception and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that's going on. So I think media knows how to influence people into believing these ideologies because they know about biases. I'm pretty sure they have to. You know what I mean? Like you can see it on Fox News all over. They just like say things that people want to hear. And like when you're a person that doesn't want to hear that, you're like, holy shit, like I don't agree with this. Like this is not what I want to watch. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the channel. And then boom, CNN comes on. Like, okay, they're talking about Trump in a negative way. I want to watch this because this is what I believe. You know what I mean? So I think they kind of have this thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if media stations are working with each other on this. Let's create two polarized ends, right? Let's create us, the Republicans, them, the Democrats. Let's leave CNN, let's leave, let's leave them Democratic, let's leave Fox News Republican, because it's so obvious. It's just too obvious. How can you not notice the differences?
and and it's I love how you brought up Trump. I was trying to avoid that, but I love how you brought it up because it goes with where I was going to continue to go with this conversation with cancel culture, which is I I love that individual, and so whatever they say is right,
Mm-hmm.
or I hate that individual for whatever reason. I dislike them, heavily dislike them, and for whatever reason that individual, anything they say is wrong. And this kind of way, especially the young people, because of the whole social media aspect, and our brains, we're very primitive still. We still don't know how to really understand the type of way our brain is changing because of social media. And so for example, we weren't meant to write 100 characters on Twitter to explain something so deeply. So people just put something out there, and the effect it's having in our society is crazy. But Trump is a perfect example of this cancel culture because some people love him and hate him, and when you hate him, you want to cancel him out. I think I blame that a lot on the social media aspect, and that's just me personally. It doesn't mean that's an all or nothing, but to me that's a social media aspect, and I'm seeing that go forward in other aspects of our life. Like for example, I like Chipotle or I dislike Chipotle. It can't just be like I'm going in there to get this one thing that I kind of do like it. It's all about whether I like or don't like this type of mentality, this this illusion of choice that we have. When you see this, are you seeing this also, for example, where you live or in your experience? This kind of, I like the individual, so it's either I like everything they say or I like nothing.
Oh
Are you
yeah.
seeing this more and more?
Yes,
Uh,
yes, I am.
and
Yeah.
and with the cancel culture, what negative impacts do you think looking at individuals saying I like this person or dislike this person? Obviously, that's cancel culture within itself because now you're falling in line with the emotion you have to that person. But what negative impacts do you think that can have on us as a society?
So in a societal perspective, I feel like that impact is going to have is that it's going to put some people in more power than others, or the opposite. I think like if you like the individual and you have like a bunch of people preaching about that individual, how good he is, how, whatever the case may be, that's going to make that person more powerful. And I think that's just like the whole sort of like ideology of social media, right? When it comes to like influencers and things like that, like you kind of like look at this person, all the validation they're getting, all the likes that they're getting, all the recognition that they're getting, makes me see that person as like, yeah, whatever they say is going to be like more meaningful to me, because they get a lot of recognition. It's like it's something that's interesting when you think about it, like how that can really like put people in power.
But wouldn't you say that's dangerous? That's dangerous, and that's kind of the whole thing behind it because if I'm just going off if I like that person or don't like based on the emotion they give me, and I'm making all my decisions based on that instead of actual facts and points and things that they're saying, doesn't that put us as a society down a dangerous rope? Which is kind of everything here is in relation to cancel culture and like how I want to cancel this person because I don't like them for whatever reason. Don't you think we're heading down a slippery slope in regards to that?
And that's, I think that also kind of like, yes, I do, like because obviously like if, let's say, I mean, just look at what happened with COVID, right? I mean, like you had like the some, I guess like you had people putting it down, people who had the stronger voice putting it down, and then you had people who weren't up in that pedestal being, put down, right? So you had people, yeah, you had some leaders that were trying to like, push down on COVID, like it's not a big deal, everything's okay, don't panic, right? But then you had like the scientists saying like, no, 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 like it's something serious, right? But then you had that leader saying like, no, it's not anything serious because I don't want the economy to get messed up, whatever the case may be. So people are going to listen to that, like I'm talking about Trump people are going to listen to him and be like, yes, he's right. Like, we shouldn't make this a serious issue. But then boom, look, you had like almost 500,000 people die off of that one decision, right? So it's kind of like, but no one, like whoever is like a Trump supporter right now listening, they're going to hear me saying this and they're going to be like, no, that's not true. That's not true. Like, it's not him. He's he made the right decisions. He made the right calls. But I guess it's dangerous because you're not looking at the reality, right? Like you can't surpass your liking for this person to see the reality of what that person is doing, So like, I think it's kind of like creating danger because it's creating delusions, right? It's creating like false beliefs, false narratives, and people are just going to be in tune with those narratives. And is that it goes into the question, like, is that really, it could be labeled as dangerous, but I guess like on a moralistic perspective, is it really right or wrong that that's happening? Like, is it right or is it wrong? You know what I mean?
Well, with social media, I think the surface thinking that we're all doing, even myself, to act like it doesn't affect me. If I make a post and I post it, and then I'm looking at what you're posting on your business with MindWorks, or I'm looking at somebody else's, I'm literally doing the same thing, because there's no way I can gauge in some deep thinking or critical thinking by just looking at a little square. And then scrolling, because everything is a surface. I'm not diving in deep. It's like reading the title of a published article or something like that. I'm not really. It's like, okay, what happened to me analyzing how they did the research, what was the steps involved, and that's what it is. So, and to be honest, just for the audience to share, you and I, we probably voted different ways this election, but I agree. That's the cool thing about us, is that I agree with everything that you're saying, because I do see how I even fall into this trap of, I like this individual or I dislike this individual. I like this station, I dislike this station. So now everything they say, either it's right or everything they say is wrong, depending on where my emotions fall behind that. And we're all suckers for this. And to act like it doesn't exist, I think it's a bad thing. Now, I guess we can finish this, Andre, and it kind of goes with the cancel culture, because we're both licensed mental health clinicians, and it's how I'm seeing people use our profession as a weapon now, right? And I know these are probably weird topics for you. I'm sorry,
no,
but
okay.
I am, yeah. But I'm seeing
I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this.
But I'm seeing people use our profession as a weapon now, right? And I think I saw it, despite what everybody's opinions are regarding Trump. I saw it used again, and we're gonna use him because he's this. I think he's the most polarizing figure.
Yeah,
I'm talking about polarizing as in people, you love him or you hate him type of thing. But I think people use our profession more as a weapon now. And I'll give you an example. Like I'll tune into a radio station and they'll be misusing words like anxiety, trauma. Or I saw it with Trump, like he never had a proper assessment, but people were saying he was a narcissist, and it's like, okay, hold on a second. Like I'll even say he had some symptoms that can be put under, the narcissistic criteria and the DSM, but I can't diagnose him with that. I can't say that because I need a proper assessment. So I feel a lot of people are using terms like trauma, anxiety, and even personality disorders as a weapon in our field. To cancel them out, which is why I bring this up, to cancel them out.
I see what you mean.
Are you seeing this? And if you are, what are your feelings regarding this? Because when I see it, I become kind of bothered.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I feel bothered too. And just one thing to off the record, I'm gonna say, like, I don't hate Trump. I'm not like a anti-Trump person. No, definitely not. I actually did agree with a lot of his policies. A lot of his policies were great for the economy, were great for certain individuals and stuff like that. It helped a lot. Like, Trump was not like the worst. I mean, some people may think otherwise, but I think Trump definitely did some positive things. I just think his last year was a little bumpy and rough because of the decisions he made weren't in tune. That was like his final test. I was like, honestly, yeah, Trump is doing some good things, you know what I mean? But then like when that stuff happened, it was just like, oh, okay, like let me go back and like, reinstate that. But like, I think that's like an issue. I feel like when you're in that gray area a lot, you kind of like, once again, like you lose kind of like who you are, kind of like, in a sense, like, or what you feel or what you value, kind of, because you're kind of like thinking a lot, like, okay, like he did a lot of good things, but I'm not going to label him as like this bad person, you know. He also did some positive things, so I can't really label him as like this evil, you know, whatever the case may be, because there were some good things he did. And honestly, like, that's all about looking past those biases, looking past that cancel culture, you know, kind of like, just instead of like making a black and white decision, you're kind of like diving in there and actually doing like, okay, like, he did this, he lowered taxes for the middle class. I'm not gonna lie, that helped me tremendously. You know what I mean? He did a few things that did help, you know. So, you know, you can't, I just feel like, you know, if you're in that gray area, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Like, you can go in there, have a decision, and you can always change it. It doesn't make you like a contradictive person. I feel like that actually makes you more of a powerful person, because as you grow older, and you stick to one belief throughout your whole life, you're not changing, you're not growing, you're just strictly thinking this is it and that's it. You know, you're not like, oh well, this is different, he changed and now things are, you know, better, whatever the case may be. That's what you went back to saying. It's like, when you look at the individual and you either hate that individual or you like them, that's going to influence, or whatever you feel about them is going to influence how you perceive them, right? So I feel like, you know, it's just like a whole thing, I guess, like with that, like, you know, you kind of have to like just really not look at the person for what people label them as, but you got to look at the background of them and really figure them out and learn more about them and then make a decision on that.
I'm so happy that you're helping promote for people to stay in the gray area. I'm so happy about that because I that's what this whole point about it is. I feel people are not in the gray area enough, and that's why we have cancel culture. And if at the end of the day I may not agree with what my next door neighbor has to say, I agree with their right to say it. And because it's inviting me to think in a different way. Even and I don't want to cancel my next door neighbor out, even if I may not agree with them. And so inviting people to be more in this gray area, Andre, like you're doing, I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was a really, really good conversation about cancel culture, and we kind of dived in a little deep. And I think for the next one, if you honor us again with another visit, it would be good to do a part two to this, because I think we need not only the United States but the whole human race to start thinking in the gray area. And I think we would make a lot more progress as a society and as a civilization if we did, because we wouldn't look at things like the psychology behind, I'm part of the Republican Party or I'm a Democrat. So it's almost like you're identifying with whatever these groups say instead of thinking for ourselves. And I've been branching out into that, and I don't know why I'm really passionate about this, man. So guys, Andre De Castro, I appreciate you, man, for coming on. Do you want to share, Andre, before you leave, where people can find you?
Yeah, you could find me on my Instagram page. Typically, it's at MindWorks NYC. So it's MindWorks NYC. That's the Instagram page that you can find me at. And yeah, if you want, just give me a follow.
And he also is a licensed mental health counselor, and he's doing this interview from his office, guys. So if you're ever in the New York area and you're looking for a therapist, I think I would give him a call. Unfortunately, I live in Florida, so it's okay. But I appreciate you, Andre. Thank you so much. I'm gonna put his information in the caption if you're on YouTube, and if you're on Spotify, I'm also gonna put the link that you can copy and paste on the description. Okay. Thanks so much, Andre. I really appreciate you. And thank you so much, Psych Lifers, for tuning in from wherever you are in the world. And as always, my name's Juan, and thanks for tuning into the Psych Life podcast. Take care, and take care, Andre.
Thank you, Juan.